Hi, everybody, and welcome to week 3, chapter 3 of Planning Curriculum in Early Childhood. This week, we're going to start looking at the cycle of curriculum planning, and it really is a cycle, and we'll get into that more. Last week, we covered 2 chapters quickly, partially because they were somewhat review for you. You'd talked about theories and theorists before, learned about them in the Child Development Professional and when you took Intro to Child Development. Hopefully this time you were looking at through them with a lens of what that means for curriculum. And then the second chapter was on play, which of course we've been emphasizing for a long time and how important it is, and that is a child's number one job is to play. That is what they should get to do. That is what they should be doing. That is how they learn and grow. So of course, if we're going to look at planning a curriculum for them at our center, then we've got to look at how they learn. We got to decide what we want them to learn, what they need to learn, and how they can learn it. And the answer there is through play. But we can't just set them free, set them loose all day and say, here's some toys, play. We want to create guided play experiences that help them and facilitate the learning that we want to take place. So that's where this class really comes into play. So I will just get started with the chapter notes. So the first section of your book is that planning happens in a cycle. Planning is a continuous cycle of observation, documentation, reflection, and implementation. It shapes the daily flow, classroom environment, and spontaneous experiences, supporting meaningful curriculum and holistic development. This cycle of observation, documentation, reflection, and implementation, each step feeds into the next step, and therefore it creates an ongoing, evolving process that supports continuous growth and learning. Because once you observe, you're going to document, and then you're going to plan something, and then you're going to implement that plan. And guess what you're going to do with that plan? Or when you implement it, you're going to observe it again, and it just keeps going. And I want to really point out that in the middle here is reflection, because you're reflecting in every process. Observation is about being present and attentive to children's play without directing it. It allows teachers to see children as those small scientists mastering new skills. For example, observing a child with a visual impairment shows growing empathy and curiosity, which supports learning. Observation is shaped by several personal and societal lenses, though, such as culture, our own personal temperament, or the observer's personal temperament, their personal experiences, their professional knowledge, and various community values shape observations. So while these perspectives offer valuable insights, they can also introduce biases, which is not something we want to have when making observations. An example of that would be a teacher's own cultural background may influence how they perceive a child's behavior, or their professional knowledge may shape how they interpret developmental milestones. So it's important to be cautious, as these lenses can affect the objectivity of the observations that you make. So teachers should aim to be aware of their own biases, and we all have them. Some we might not be aware of, some that might seem pretty harmless, but we all have things that we lean towards or lean against, different kinds of just things in life. And if you haven't taken diversity, we will dive much more into personal biases in that class. But teachers need to be aware of their own personal biases and strive to observe children through a neutral, open-minded approach to ensure that each child is understood in their own unique context. So effective observation strategies include observing children across different settings and routines to gain a comprehensive understanding of their behavior. It's important to capture spontaneous moments, as these often reveal authentic insights into a child's development and interests. To make the most of your observations, it's essential to organize and store them systematically. This can be done through written notes, photos, or recordings, so you can easily refer back to them when reflecting and planning for future learning. Ensuring accurate observation means staying factual and objective. You want to document only what you see and hear. Avoid any judgments, opinions, or ambiguous language or any interpreting of what you see. It's essential that you ask yourself, would another observer describe this behavior in the same way? And that helps keep the focus on what's happening rather than on any personal interpretations. And this ensures that observations are reliable and that they're consistent. So you document only the actions and words you actually see and hear, not interpreting them. Like here, the child stacked 10 blocks and smiled. Okay. You don't want to include the child stacked 10 blocks, which was new for them, and then was happy. Was happy is different than smiled, maybe. Just what you see. So like here, the child looked happy and proud of their work. Well, what you would want to write is what the child actually did that made you decide they looked happy. What actual actions or words were there that told you they were happy and proud? Observation is the first step in understanding a child's development, but it's only once that data is gathered that interpretation comes into play. Teachers must be cautious when moving from observation to interpretation, ensuring that their insights are based on clear, objective facts rather than assumptions. The why of interpretation lies in the need to understand the deeper meaning behind children's actions. For example, if a child is playing alone, an objective observer might simply note that the child is by themselves. The interpretation could explore whether it's due to shyness, preference, or perhaps difficulty engaging with their peers. The when to interpret comes after enough observations have been collected to make sense of patterns or behaviors over time. Interpretation needs to be done once there is sufficient data to draw conclusions about the child's needs, their skills, their interests, or any challenges that they're facing. And this allows for more informed, individualized planning that truly supports the child's learning journey. Documentation serves two key purposes in the planning cycle. First, it helps teachers record daily observations and capture the moments that can inform immediate responsive planning for the next steps in their learning. And second, documentation provides concrete evidence for periodic assessments, and it's a way to track progress over time and to make informed decisions about future curriculum adjustments. Maintaining thorough documentation allows teachers to ensure that they are continuously attuned to children's development and ready to adjust learning experiences as needed. Your book has a snail scenario that takes you through each of the steps of the planning cycle. So I recommend you go read that and really notice just how it relates to each part for you. There it is. So I think I got ahead a little. There, I think I skipped this slide. Sorry. There are various methods of documentation that could be used to capture children's learning, like anecdotal notes, provide brief descriptive accounts of specific incidents, event samples focus on recording occurrences of particular behaviors or actions over time, running records capture continuous real-time observations, time samples note behavior at specific intervals throughout the session or any session, and photos and videos give you visual documentation of key moments. And then there are also work samples that showcase child's output, like drawings or writings. And really, ideally, you want a mix of all of these for a comprehensive view. And there's where I mentioned the snail sample, or snail scenario. So organizing documentation can be done using folders, binders, digital tools, whatever works for you. Just make sure you regularly review them. Portfolios have become very popular. They collect work samples, photos, and notes that you might make to reflect a child's growth. So they're more comprehensive than a lot of things are. Date and file items in order and include varied documentation and review them with families to gain even deeper insights. Reflection, like I mentioned earlier, is a crucial part of the planning cycle as it helps teachers design curriculum that supports children's needs and interests. By reflecting on the observations that we make, teachers can encourage more complex play and foster continuous learning. And reflection leads to individualized care and learning by asking questions like, what developmental skill is the child working on? Or how does the child engage with toys or people? And this helps guide the next steps in planning to best support each child's development. Reflecting on observations also allows teachers to understand the deeper meaning behind children's behaviors and interactions, because each child's story is unique, and reflection helps you as a teacher piece together these stories to inform your teaching practices. For example, reflecting on how a child engages with peers or activities can reveal insights into their developmental stage, guiding the teacher to respond more effectively. This process of reflection helps teachers adjust their approaches to meet the individual needs of each child and ensures that every child is supported in their learning journey. After you reflect on observations, it's important to adapt your practices to better meet the children's needs. That's what all this is about, adapting as we need to. This can involve adjusting the environment to encourage more engagement, modifying daily schedules or routines to better suit children's interests, or making discussions based on what a child knows and is ready to learn. So by being responsive and flexible, teachers can provide more individualized support and ensure that the learning environment evolves in a way to nurture each child's development and growth. And I think this is a good place for me to offer some bonus. So if you want to send me a Canvas inbox message, just very briefly telling me about a time that you had to, that something didn't go as you planned and you had to adapt, or maybe even better for this slide, a time that you noticed something about how a child learns, and so you adapted to better suit that child. So just send me a Canvas inbox message, label it week 3 bonus, and tell me about a time. So after reflecting on observations, it's important to adapt our practices. Sorry, that was the last slide I was on. So using reflection for curriculum planning, here are just some examples of what I said on the last slide, ways that you can incorporate things into the classroom. And that snail scenario is helpful again. And some reflective questions just for you. Think about what you were passionate about as a child. What could teachers have documented about your interests, and how could they have planned around your experiences? And of course, we're asking that to get you thinking about you as a child and what would have benefited you, and maybe that will help you think about what could benefit others. And now we're to the role of implementation in the planning cycle, which is the phase where teachers put their curriculum plans into action, the fun part, right? As you carry out the activities, you closely observe children's responses, and that's where the cycle truly comes to life. Teachers may find out that children's reactions offer new insights and ideas, and sometimes lead to unexpected discoveries and moments of amazement. So these responses then become a valuable part of that ongoing cycle of observation, reflection, and documentation. And as this documentation is reviewed, the cycle of observation, reflection, and planning continues to involve ensuring that curriculum remains responsive to children's needs. Here are some more reflective questions that can be asked during implementation. Did children respond the way you expected them to? or their surprises? What concepts are children forming? Excuse me. How do English learners and native English speakers collaborate when in this activity? And is there evidence of progress on measures like the DRDP if you use that? And there's a part of the snail scenario for this too. So what if plans change? Sometimes plans don't go as expected, and that's okay. One of the key characteristics that a teacher has to have is flexibility, because it's key in responding to children's interests and the discoveries they make. So if something unexpected happens, like maybe they're suddenly fascinated with dandelions, it can shift the focus of the curriculum. Teachers use reflection to adjust plans and allow for really dynamic learning experiences that continue to evolve with children's curiosity and engagement. Some more reflective questions for you. And the next section of the book is about partnering with families. Collaboration with families enhances understanding of children's behavior and interests. By reflecting on documentation together, teachers and families help bridge that school home, what can be a disconnect sometime, but we're hoping to build that bridge and build better experiences for continued learning. And then you've got the snail scenario again. So I really hope you'll go back and look at the snail scenario with each of these different areas in mind. Family involvement brings cultural insights as well, strengthening again that school, home, and community connection, and it promotes consistent learning experiences. So some more reflection questions for you to consider. And in conclusion, embedding learning into children's lives makes it more meaningful. Emotional engagement enhances cognitive development, and personalizing learning deepens understanding. Teachers play a key role in discovering what is meaningful for each child, and that's you. You've got an important key role.